right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 2026 Scholastic How to Enter Art Juror panel. My name is Juliana Lee Marino. I am the Senior Manager of Program Strategy here at the Alliance for Young Artists and Writers, the presenters of the Scholastic Art and Writing Awards. Tonight, I am joined by my colleague, Julia Barrick, and two of our lovely former jurors from the 2025 Scholastic Awards, Aleha and Chinwe. You'll be hearing more from them shortly. I'm also joined by three of my colleagues in the chat, Magin, Lorenzo, and Chim, who will be helping to answer some of your many questions. A couple housekeeping notes. This webinar is being recorded and may appear in our Scholastic Gold Key YouTube page. If you don't wish to appear in the recording, you can stay off camera as just a spectator. Closed captioning is available. You can click on the CC at the bottom of your Zoom window to enable those. And please, both the Q&A box and the Zoom chat are open. Please try to put your questions for the jurors into the Q&A box, not the chat. Questions in the Q&A box have the best chance of being answered because it is organized and set up for exactly that. But you are welcome to use the chat, say hi, say hello, talk about what you're working on, what you're watching. Try to also keep the chat civil and on topic. A quick overview of the agenda for tonight. We'll start with a brief presentation just about a high-level overview of the awards. We're not going to go too in-depth into that. If you are interested in hearing more in-depth and for a more in-depth webinar about how to enter, you can, we'll be having a How to Enter for Teens webinar, our last webinar of this series, next Tuesday, December 2nd at 7 p.m. Eastern. You can register just like you registered for this one through any of the e-blasts that we send out or through our newsroom post there. You might already be registered for it. So after that, we'll talk a little bit about our judging criteria and then move on to the main event, hearing from our panelists. We have a couple pre-recorded questions, or preset, I should say, questions for them, and then we'll turn it over to the Q&A box, and we will, again, get through as many questions as we can from the Q&A box. We're not going to be able to get through every question. If you have additional questions or if you have very specific to your circumstances questions, you can send those to artandwriting.org/contact. And a member of our team will get back to you from there. We do get a lot of questions into that contact form. Please trust us that we are working through them as quickly as we are able to in the order that they come in, and ask for your patience in responding to those. But now onto the show. So a little bit about the Alliance. So we are the Alliance for Young Artists and Writers, a nonprofit presenter of the Scholastic Art and Writing Awards. Fun fact is that many people think that the awards are presented by Scholastic themselves. And while we have a very close working relationship with Scholastic Inc., we are a distinct nonprofit entity. Some fun facts about the 2025 Scholastic Awards are that nearly 110,000 teens from the US and Canada entered last year. They entered collectively more than 310,000 works of art and writing. At the national level, 2,800 medals were given out at our national awards ceremony held each June in Carnegie Hall. And regionally, over 14,000 gold keys in art and over 5,000 gold keys in writing were awarded last year. So there's many, many opportunities to receive recognition at both the regional and national level. Who is eligible? So public, private, and homeschool students in the US and Canada can all enter. You just have to be in grades 7 through 12, and you have to be at least 13 years of age. That is a legal requirement if You turn 13. If you're 12, about to turn 13, as long as you turn 13 before your entry deadline, you can make an account. You can make an account on your birthday. But if you turn 13, even a day after your entry deadline, unfortunately, you will have to wait for next year and resubmit and submit your work then. Work submitted to the awards can have been created at any time. It does not have to have been created in the past year. There's 3 basic steps to entering: make an account, upload your work, and complete payment or a fee waiver. Again, we'll be talking more about this in depth, including a portal walkthrough from the teen perspective of how to create an account on the 2nd. There we go. Entry deadlines begin as early as December 1. That is so soon. That is next Monday. So check your entry deadline. You can find that via your region finder at artandwriting.org/regions. Every region's deadline is different. They can be as early as December 1 or as late as January 7th, I believe, is the final deadline. We do not accept late work, so you have to get those in before the deadline. And pro tip is that we are not working at 11:30 at night. And so if you run into technical issues, if you have a question, if your computer freezes, we can't help you at 11:30 at night, 29 minutes before the deadline. So start those submissions early. If you're in the US, you might have some days off of school. And try to spend at least a small portion of that time working on getting those submissions in well before the deadline if you can. Regional announcement day is Wednesday, January 28th. So that's when all the portal accounts will be updated about regional awards. Works that receive a gold key then advance to the national round of judging and awarding later that spring. A little bit about the entry fees. So the cost for an individual entry is $10 and a portfolio is $30. A portfolio consists of 6 individual works in addition to a artist statement and brief personal statement. These are only open to 12th graders. All the other regular entries are open to all grades. For payment methods, everyone accepts payment via credit card. Some regions may allow payment via cash or check. Payment is handled at the regional level, so it's up to the regional affiliate who's running the regional ceremony's discretion. Some regions also allow for educators to pay via invoice on behalf of many of their students if a school is submitting, or if it's part of a school project to submit to the awards. Please note that fee waivers are available for all teens for whom a fee poses a barrier to participation. There is no additional paperwork or testing needed for that. It is.
Yeah, and
Julie,
let me jump in and just say that somebody asked in the chat before this seminar if
I don't think I can hear you, Julia.
can anyone else hear me? Yes, okay. Somebody asked if
Chinmay or
yeah,
Aleja,
yeah,
can you hear Julia?
Alejandro nodded. So I'm just going to say real quick that in fact there is no limit to how many works can be fee waived in a school. Your school will not get dinged. There's no demerits. There's no repercussion for using a fee waiver. There's no shame around it. Use a fee waiver if you need to. All right, take it away, Juliana.
Forgive me if I repeat what Julia just said. If you are able to pay, please do so. Your fee helps us run this program at the regional and national level, judge your works, host the ceremonies, host the exhibitions. These are our categories. There are 29 categories in total. We talked a little bit about the the art and writing portfolio categories that are only open to 12th grade. If you're an underclassman, you are save your awarded work or any of sort of what you feel was your best work, because works can be re-entered as part of your portfolio. The portfolio is also our most exciting category. So the 16 gold medalists and get a $12,500 scholarship, and 24 silver medalists for portfolios receive a $2,000 scholarship. And these are, half of those portfolios are for writing and half of those are for art. There's no other limitations, again, on who else can enter the other categories. So a little bit about our awards, our three criteria. They are originality, skill, and emergence of personal voice or vision. A little bit about each. So originality, this is the core of the Scholastic Awards. This is what really motivates and drives the awards. We want to know what your perspective is, your thoughts, your message, your creations. We want to celebrate you and your voice and perspective and uniqueness. So we can't say that enough times, and you'll hear our jurors talk a little bit about what that means to them and how they express originality in their own work and how they have judged for originality in awards past. A couple other housekeeping notes about this is that work submitted must be copyright free. So that means that because when you enter your work, you are granting us non-exclusive copyright usage of your work, we have to be able to reproduce your work in our publications, in our exhibitions. So you also retain rights to your work. You can do whatever you want with it. You can display it. You can submit it to other journals. But someone else, like a musician, cannot have a copyright claim for your work, because then we would not be able to reproduce your film, for example, if it had copyrighted music in there. Your work can be inspired by existing art or writing out there if it significantly transforms the source material into something guided by your own voice or vision. And we define transformative work as something that adds value, substantially changes, comments on, or gives new expression or meaning to the source. You can read about our copyright plagiarism and AI policies in depth on our website. We take originality seriously and do screen all of our works. But there's plenty of examples about what is and what we believe does and does not meet those criteria. But ultimately, you have to decide if you believe your work meets our eligibility criteria using your own best judgment. We recommend a best practice of keeping drafts or taking process photos in the case that you are asked to demonstrate proof of originality. A little bit about skill. As a note, we get asked this question a lot. You're being judged as a teen amongst your own age bracket and age group peers, not as an adult. What I mentioned before about taking process photos also goes along with just sort of taking high quality photos of your work to really showcase your technical skill. And I should say also about skills, we are looking at skill as a means to the end of originality. We're not looking for skill alone, but we're looking for a variety of skills and techniques that support and contribute to your work's larger message, larger meaning, larger impact. And finally, we have voice or emergence of personal voice or vision. This is really closely related to originality, and we can't say it enough or in enough different ways. We want to hear your voice, see your vision, not someone else's, not your mom's, not your teachers, not your idols, not Andy Warhol's, your vision. Um, we do not, there are not additional statements that accompany your work. I know that there was briefly a summary box for some users to go alongside your work that jurors will not be reviewing any sort of summary of your work. That was a technical error that has since been resolved. So your work, that is to say that your work is being judged on your work alone. Um, Including the fact that jurors don't see any biographical information about you. They don't see your name or where you're from. They only see your grade because that's how we sort our panels. All right. So now I will get to what we have all been waiting for you to meet the jurors. So with that, I'll hand it over to Julia.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Julia Barrick. I am a senior manager of adjudications and national events here at the Alliance, and that means I get to work with a lot of jurors. They're so, so wonderful. If you take one thing away from this event tonight, those of you who are here as audience members, please know that people who look at your work are incredibly talented, really engaged, successful artists, and they're really excited to help encourage you to do work and grow. And so I'm really pleased to be able to introduce two of those wonderful jurors this evening. Alejandra Arujo is a director and creative from Queens, New York, by way of Columbia, a graduate of NYU's Tisch School of the Arts. She's collaborated with brands including Uber, Netflix, Google, the NFL, and Peloton. Alejandra's background in visual and fine arts informs her distinct approach to storytelling and design. She's been recognized as a finalist for Dolby Labs Finish, the Script Grant, the Emerged Filmmaking Lab, Paxeros Women of Color Commercial Directing Initiative, and she is also an alum of Women in Films Insight Program and 72nd and Sunny's Creative Residency. And we're so happy and honored to have her this evening. The other juror who is joining us is Chinwe Okona. Chinwe is a Brooklyn-based interdisciplinary artist, pianist, and vocalist whose work weaves together classical tradition, contemporary song, and narrative-driven performance. Alongside her creative practice, she works on the marketing team at the New York Philharmonic and loves any opportunity to make music in collaboration with others. And they are just two of the wonderful jurors who have looked at work in the past year. So we are going to get to ask them a couple of questions, and then, like Juliana said, we'll also have some of your questions reach them. So jurors, Alejandra, Chinwe, thank you so much for being here, and tell us how you became a juror. What drew you to being a juror for the Scholastic Awards? Whichever of you feels confident saying speaking first.
I can go ahead. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. My name is Alejandra. As Julia mentioned, I'm a creative from Queens. I would say what drew me to this was the fact that I also once was a teenager that actually was part of Scholastic Art and Writing Awards for film. And I feel like winning a gold key, I don't even remember, it might have been. I feel old. It just gave me confidence. Like this is something I could pursue, as a career, as an option. And I feel like this program, like many others, I was also, for those New Yorkers on the chat, part of Tribeca Film Institute and Ghetto Film School. I feel like these programs just give you like a confidence and it feels like, oh wow, like my voice really matters. So I just want to give that back. And it feels like a full circle moment. Uh, juroring, I guess is the word, works now. So yeah.
That's so wonderful. Thank you. So yes, this is I love inviting Alejandra and also inviting jurors like her who have won awards in the past. And it's true that not every juror who's won an award remembers exactly what it was, but they all remember, and it does make a difference. So please be encouraged. Chinwe, can you speak with us about what drew you to being a juror for the awards?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Chinwe. I was drawn to being a juror because I had recently moved from California to New York, and I was looking for opportunities to be with other artists. So, in addition to getting to see wonderful work by you all, it's also really lovely to spend the time discussing that work with those of us who are in our practices still at our big ages. So that was a big draw for me to meet other artists. And I'm not someone who got to do a lot of art as a teen or a young person. So it's really fun now to be able to enable that and be a part of making sure that these programs exist for those of us who didn't have access to them. So that's really fun for me, and I appreciate it for that reason as well.
That's wonderful. Thank you both. So the big question, does a piece of artwork stand out to you that either of you saw last year or in a previous year? And can you speak to us about why it stuck with you?
Sure, I'll go first. I would say I had to think about it, but I did end up remembering this short film called Bye Bye World. I believe it was by a 12th grader in California, in Irvine, I think. But yeah, the story was essentially just like an emotionally honest story that had some tragedy in there. And for me, that just felt really like vulnerable. So long story short, the story is about this kid who sees his parents arguing, and this is also animated, it's 2D animation. It's a little imperfect. It has like the pencil textures and stuff like that, almost like watercolor. But I feel like that's the stuff that made it feel almost like childlike in the sense where it felt like, wow, this is what it feels like to be a kid and to be scared. And but anyway, it's about a kid sees his parents arguing, and then he escapes into the forest and finds like solace in nature with the bunnies and everything.
Oh, right.
Yeah, and then he goes back home. Parents are still like, ah, and then goes back to the forest and then sees developers. Like it's like tractors and just like construction going on. The forest is gone, and then he sees his bunny and it's dead. Um, so yeah, I feel like that piece really stuck out to me because I feel like that felt like a very like um this was in rural China, I believe, too, the setting. So it just felt very like authentic in that way. And also it for me it just spoke like more to like a generational sort of thing where I feel like young people are really seeing like the effects of climate change and just like the world changing before their eyes and feeling scared. And so I feel like it kind of touched on a lot of different things. So originality was there for me, and then skill. Like I love that style of animation. I thought it was really well done. Like again, it wasn't perfect. Like the lines weren't crispy and solid, but it still just had this beautiful movement. So I feel like the technical component was there, the skill was there. Um, yeah, I would say that's the piece for me.
Perfect. That answers another question that so many of you have asked in the chat and to us, which is what does skill mean? Right? It doesn't have to be you're not at the end of your artistic career yet. You haven't settled in your final form, whatever that is, of your technique. You haven't mastered everything yet. That's not what this is about. This is about really trying to express something that you feel passionate about, and it works, right? I remember that film, and so does Alejandra. Chinwe, would you talk to us about something that you remember?
Definitely. You probably remember this because you were in the room with me, Julia. There was a series of photos that I saw last year, and they were of a wrestling team, seemingly. And when I first saw these photos, I didn't immediately have that, like, oh, these are so great. They were really a piece of work that the student had taken the time to use interesting lighting and depicted like teammates together, teammates alone. And as I spent time with the work, I was really going deep of like, wondering what each photograph was depicting. There was really amazing composition in terms of lighting and structure that was very reminiscent of like even Renaissance paintings. And I really liked that it was surrounding something that a lot of people have some sort of experience with, whether it be sports or team, being on a team, being in the presence of others. And I really liked that it didn't hit me over the head as like, this is this epic one of one thing. It was epic and one of one, and it's kind of interrogation of something that was quite familiar to me. I grew up as an athlete. I had friends who were athletes. And so I thought that was a really unique way of exploring some really cool photography techniques while also drawing on something that felt like it could be a common experience among multiple people.
That's also such a good example. Of course, I remember that that was a portfolio work, and in fact, that portfolio won the highest honor that we offer players. That portfolio won a gold medal. So that student won a $12,000 scholarship for that work, and so that's a really great example. Also, in the last panel for Meet the Jurors, when folks had a chance to talk to the writing jurors, a lot of young people asked the question of, how do I express something? I'm not sure that anything's happened in my life yet, right? Like, what if a big thing, what if a big dramatic thing hasn't happened to me? Is my art still worth making? Can I still make interesting art? And Chinwei, you have said like such a good example, right? Which is that if you pay close enough attention to what's right next to you, what's beside you, um, then everything's interesting, right? What your point of view is what's interesting. That's such a great example. Okay, thank you both so much. We have more questions. Um, the criteria, these criteria, of course, we talk to jurors. I talk to the jurors a lot, and my colleagues do as well. And at every region, the regional the site directors talk to their jurors about these criteria: originality, skill, and emergence of personal voice or vision. What does that mean to you or look like to you when you're looking at an artwork? Um, you've talked about this a little bit when you talked about your favorite works, but would you both go into that a little deeper?
Sure. I think for me, originality is when you are creating something that's true to you, to your own life. And that doesn't have to be a traumatic moment, it could be something, a memory, it could be a smell, it could be maybe your fears. Like, I feel like tapping into a little bit of the vulnerable side is what really is like, wow, this is probably something that no one else might be going through. And it's brave to share that, and it makes for really good art. So not necessarily copying a type of artwork, but just making sure that it's coming from your own lived life experience.
Great. Chinmay, what do you say as well?
Skill is a really interesting one to me, partially because I'm a recovering perfectionist. And um, I have found that skill for me is most interesting when I can see the curiosity that then skill derives from. An example that I come to in my own practice is I have studied a lot of drawing and painting of Renaissance masters, Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo, and people say that they are the best drawers and painters. But if you really look at their stuff, it's like arms are really long, necks are really long. These are not proportional people. What makes them really like skillful is the way in which they were obsessed with drawing bodies. They drew feet all kinds of different ways. They drew hands all different kinds of different ways. And they took their time. They explored all the different angles and perspectives. And that's the curiosity that I think skill that really underlines skill. Like, show us that, you've spent time taking photos with high flash, low flash. Show us that you've tried animation slow-mo as fast as it can go. Just when you really explore the different ways of doing things, that I think is a more honest, I think, example of skill. And through doing those different experimentations or different ways of making your work, you will find what works for you and you'll get really good at it. And that's what we're really excited to see in your work. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you. Um, So I have a more sort of premeditated question, but that sort of brings me also into a question someone asked in advance. Someone wrote in this question about how it was to me it was a little bit of a question about iteration, and I think that speaks to what you were saying, Chinwe, which is how do you improve how do you create nuance and how do you improve upon something? So this is like a question probably for both of you in terms of your own art, right? So I think a lot of us artists, I'm a writer, right? I want to write something, I want to be perfect right away, right? But actually things really improve and develop and get rich and exciting when you make a small change and then make a small change and then make an edit and then look at it again and then try something else. Can you speak to how you make those changes and encourage yourself to edit um and make changes in your own art?
I'll go first. I'll start by saying it's really, really hard. So having patience with yourself is, for me at least, where I always start, where it's like, okay, I've written this song. It doesn't quite sound right. And it may not quite sound right. I've made this drawing. It may not quite look right for days, for weeks. And it's kind of nagging at me. And that's, I think, the moment where those little changes, that's when I have to find the strength to kind of motivate myself. Because if something's nagging at you and you're like, oh, it doesn't seem quite right, changing it is the first step to like kind of iterating and continuing on that journey. So I think I used to feel a lot like, okay, I need to make a whole new work now. I need to start from scratch. I'm only making new things if I'm starting from a blank canvas every single time. Those little changes are just as valid and really, I think, a huge part of art making. You don't have to start from scratch every single time, but if there are little elements of your work that you're like, that doesn't feel quite right, or you're just curious about how it could be different, lean into that. Those are, and building upon that will lead you into a really great body of work. Yeah.
That's such good advice. And I'm like writing that down also. Alejandra, do you have anything to add to that?
I'm trying to remember. I feel like when I was in high school, we used to have like art critiques. So we'd show our work and our peers would critique it. And I remember my heart always pounding. And I feel like it still kind of rings true to this day. I think I definitely feel a lot more confident in my voice, especially when expressing myself through my work. But it kind of still is true. I find, especially now that I'm working more in like the commercial space, like there's people that I kind of have to run things by because it's not just me. It's like, okay, I'm making work for this larger brand. Like, does this fit the bill, etc. But I still find that even when it's scary to share your work and, get feedback from your peers, from your friends, or whoever you respect in art, it's scary, but I feel like it's super, super helpful. And it's always kind of helped me like see things through another light, especially coming from, film production. Like it's a very collaborative medium, especially when you're on set. So it's like a lot of those magic moments, especially in movies that you all love and adore. It's like a lot of those moments have probably come from improv where like the actor kind of just threw out a line or the director was like, wait, let's try this. It might have not been in the script, it might have not been in pre-production, but it kind of just happened. So yeah.
That's so great. Okay, so the lesson, maybe to say that another way to add to that is, be open to ideas, be open to inspiration, and be open to a detour you didn't expect. And also be open to critique and lean on your peers and the people in your life who you trust to help you look at your work. So that actually brings us to another question. What do you think about or advise students to think about when selecting works to enter? I don't know if you're submitting to an award or a residency, and or if you were back in high school and you were submitting something, you have like a couple of drawings, you have a couple of short films. How do you make if you're going to make a choice, which of the films? How do you make that decision?
I would say pick the pieces that really just speak true to who you are and that you feel most confident about, like not the pieces that your teacher thinks is like the prettiest and the most perfect, Like that stuff is great. If there's that your voice in it as well. If there's that POV, your life, your, just your mind, your brain, your heart, like we want to see that. I feel like we as jurors, like we see that in a story or in a piece. So, yeah.
I think that's great advice. Thank you. Chinwe, what would you say about choosing which work?
I don't think I have anything to add. I think that was perfect. But also things that you like the best, all of the things that Alejandra said, and then also what you like the best, I would suggest.
I think that's great advice. This also speaks back to one of the questions that someone wrote in advance of this evening, which is something about it seems like still lives aren't always chosen, or it seems like there are certain biases towards certain kinds of works. Potentially, what you're seeing is that the jurors do respond when you all bring your energy to the work. So a still life, sometimes that's a class assignment. That's such good practice. It's so good to do that and to learn that. Um, but sometimes the jurors can tell, even if it's perfectly executed, it's the most stunning shadow you've ever seen. It might be a study. It might be a study, and that's so important, but it might not be the work that's going to win the award, because it's not as much expressing something that's true to you. So maybe that's another takeaway there. Okay, we have a
Julia,
couple.
can I add
Yeah.
something
Oh,
to
please.
that?
Yeah.
I feel like an example of a still life, like I'm thinking if someone submitted that, like how would that stand out for me? And it might be just like little subtle details, like let's say you're doing a still life of like some flowers and some fruit, the usual, like maybe there's like a frame in the background with like, your mom or like something personal. I feel like in adding just like those personal touches, it now you're telling a story. Now it's not just an orange, but okay, like we're getting to know the artist, like we're getting to see something. And I think that just makes it so much more interesting.
That's a perfect addition. That's exactly right. I think another question to deviate from my script, another question someone asked in advance of the evening was, how important is a story? Is now that there was some anxiety from you all on the chat, right, about taking away the description of the work description. But all that means is that we want the work to tell a story, right? So like all I said about is there picture, like, are you adding something to that still life, or are you choosing to put in this still life an item that's significant to your religion, an item that's significant to your cultural tradition or background? Is there something, is the fruit decaying? Is there something happening there? So I think story is important, story is compelling, but it doesn't have to be super literal, and it doesn't have to be written out next to the words. So don't everybody in the chat stop, don't worry about the fact that there's no description. That's okay. You're going to tell the story, you're artists, you're going to tell the story visually. Okay, another question. So one thing that's so great about the awards is that, as you know, the jurors, you look at the work anonymously, right? And so we don't know who the speaker is, right? We don't know who the photographer is, who the painter is. We don't know anything about them. Um, do you have any advice for students, even though it's anonymous? Do you have any advice for students who are nervous about doing the thing that we keep asking them to do, right? Share their authentic selves. What's a good way to get comfortable with doing that?
Ooh, I would say that practice is always good. We spoke a little bit about collaborators earlier. If you have close friends who are also working on works, like kind of teasing or like sharing some things with friends could be a good way to start to practice that vulnerability that comes with sharing your work. Um, I think in some ways it never goes away,
That's what I
but
was going to say.
it never goes away as my heart is pounding a little bit thinking about sharing some things right now. But any opportunity to practice and start to not just get comfortable with being like, here's something I've made, but kind of get the feedback from people and see how gracious people are when you share your work with others, and know that all of the people in the room who are looking at your work are feeling that same thing. More than anything, we're really excited that you've chosen to share this work with us. So just a little practice and know that we're supporting you no matter what.
That's such,
Um,
yeah, go ahead, Alejandra.
I'll add to that. I feel like that part that feels scary is probably the part that separates you from everyone else. the part that you're showing that might, yeah, it's just it's hard. Even at this age, I'm thinking about it like, wow, if I, showed some of my close friends some writing that I've been doing lately, like, oh, I'm gonna feel judged. Or it's scary, but I feel like at the end of the day, like again, that's what separates you from everyone else. So, and it's first it's anonymous. Like when we're looking at all the work, like Julia mentioned, like we don't see your name, we don't see anything, we just see the art. So, and the grade, right?
That's right. Yep, just the
Yeah.
art and the grade.
I
Um,
wanna add on a question that I'm seeing some folks talk about in the chat, and I think is a question about art broadly, but you guys are talking about being vulnerable, right? And that can also come with sort of a pressure to bear your deepest, darkest, most inner secrets, right? And that is, of course, vulnerable. But there's many different ways to be vulnerable that aren't sort of performing horror. Um, can you talk a little bit about if you've how you've seen that sort of tension of vulnerability and really, really deep personal trauma?
and also let me add one note. I think
Yes.
that one thing that Juliana is saying, and I think that you guys are you the teens who are calling in ask this question a lot, and it's a super valid question, right? Do sad works get more
Yes.
attention? Do dark works get more attention? Is tragedy gonna win? Right? And the answer is no, right? Authentic joy is so beautiful. We really want to see that. But I'll let the jurors talk also.
That reminds me of another film that I watched. I don't remember the title, but I do remember it was just very simple. It was like a girl showing her apartment. And kind of like how I mentioned in the still life, like there was just like all these like little details of her family around it. Um, and that was a film that I passed to the next round because again, like it just felt so specific to this person. I was like, wow, like who are they? And like I love that they're showing me. And it was joy. It's like Julie mentioned, it was like authentic joy. So yeah, not sad work's cool, but also like joy is great, all the emotions.
I think for me, vulnerability just means I want to be able to feel that you feel something. Doesn't have to be sad. It could be really happy. It could be surprised. A work that came to mind for me was someone who made drawings of the street where their grandmother lived. And it was like the things that they chose to highlight in those drawings were like, oh, I can smell what the street vendor is making here. Oh, I can smell the garbage across from like, and that is extremely vulnerable as well. Like kind of evoking emotion is what I think of when I think of vulnerability, and that doesn't always have to be sad. Mhm.
I
Thank you both.
agree. Just
Yeah.
one last thing. This is what I tell people whenever they ask me like, was that a good movie? And or like my threshold for what a good film is like, did it make me feel something? Like if it didn't make me feel anything, then it's probably, yeah. But even if it made me feel confused, if it made me feel anything, like I would say that was a good film.
I think that's so that's a wonderful rubric to think about. A lot of you in the chat have asked, and you write in with this question all the time, like what's the other rubric, right? I think that that's probably an internal rubric that a lot of jurors use, and definitely myself included, right? Does it make me feel all the time I'm in a room with jurors and I hear them say, like Ali just said, like, I don't know what I just saw, but I loved it, right? Like we don't have to always get it. You don't have to always get it, right? But like, are you trying? Are you reaching? Are you really struggling? Are you working through it? Did you have a question? Then you asked another question. Then you asked another question, and then yeah, that's exciting art, and that's exciting. That's what sticks in our heads also. Um, Okay, what just let's do some really simple ones. I think I think I know the answers, but are there any absolute don'ts that you would say, either of you, like something that you're like, oh, I really don't want to see this. This isn't kind of what I'm here to see. And I'll let you nodded. Do you have a don't, an immediate don't?
Sorry, I was just eating a cookie. Yes. I would say when works try to replicate another pretty prominent artist like style, that immediately I'm kind of like next. For me, that's probably like a big don't. Yeah.
Great. That's so great. And that's a really good thing for all of you listening to take in, right? Um, as Chinwe was saying earlier, it's part of the tradition of art to learn from other people, right? Chinwe was talking about the Renaissance, right? That was all of the Renaissance greats first studied their their masters and the people before them, like practicing and imitating. That's really important to learn, but that's not what we want to see at the awards. So send in, do that, absolutely do that. It's such a good way to learn. And then send us something else. Send us what we do after you do that, after you study. Okay, what do you think? What do you have an immediate don't?
Um, one that's coming to mind for me is don't necessarily want to see how well you can use your tools. Um, we don't necessarily want to see how crisp your camera is or how fine your drawing pencils are and how there's no smudges anywhere. Um, I think it's sometimes really easy to get caught up in tools. I have lots of tools everywhere, but what's more interesting is how you use the tools. So that is what's coming to mind for me. Did I do a good job, Julia?
Yes, I loved it. I loved
Okay.
it. And also Chinwe was saying something that I say to the jurors is a lot as well. We know that all of you out there are from all kinds of different schools, households, families, backgrounds, circumstances. We understand that. It's not, some of you can have access to really fancy cameras and some of you don't. And some of you are able to take some lots and lots of after school art classes and some of you aren't. And we're trying not to look just at whether you have, yeah, the best camera, the best pencil, the best digital editing software on your computer. We're trying to look past that to see like what you're trying to say, how you're trying to say it. Is there energy? Are there ideas? Have you spent a lot of time doing something cool? Framing of the shot, setting the scene. It's not all about the exact tools that you're using. So yeah, that's really important, and that's a good thing to call out. Thank you so much for saying that.
We have
Yeah.
time for just a few more questions, but I see one in the chat or in the Zoom Q&A section. Drop your questions there. That is, do you have any advice for students who don't win an award at the national or regional level? What should they do with themselves?
If oh, go ahead, Ellen.
I would say depending on where you're located, there's probably tons of other opportunities. Like I feel very fortunate, like growing up in New York, like as a teenager, I feel like I was just like applying to all the things, even if I got a no, I got a lot of no's. Like that's just life. Um, but I would say if you're between like the age requirements, like before senior year, like try again next year. Because just because you got a no this year doesn't mean like you're gonna get a no next year. You're probably gonna live a whole nother life, a whole nother year of life. That's a lot of things happening. You probably have more to speak to in terms of your artwork, and so just don't give up. Keep trying.
Finway, you're nodding.
Definitely, definitely, definitely keep going. Keep going. There's a lot of people, myself included, who didn't make anything, didn't get recognized for anything until much later in their lives, even if at all during their lives. And it's really exciting to see all the work from all of you so early in your careers, but sometimes it takes time. So no matter what happens with this particular opportunity, there's so many others out there. And what's most like exciting is that you keep going, no matter what. So that's what I would say. Yeah.
I think it's a great piece of advice, both of you. Yeah, apply other places. Who knows? Who knows? Your work that got a no in one place could get a yes in another. In fact, it will. I think that almost all of us here on the chat could list among our favorite writers, artists, photographers, filmmakers, fashion designers, every single one of those people heard no at some point during their lives. People who just hear yes actually don't always learn. They don't always change their process, ask themselves questions, improve their art. Anytime you hear a no, uh, take a second, figure out what that means. Do you want to change something? Do you don't? That's information. Yes is information, so is no. So that's just it's just part of the artistic process. And then write about it. Take a picture about it. Do art the next year about what it was like to hear no. That's art. That's also experience. Um, Juliana, is there any other final questions in the seeing in the chat that we should talk to? I have a couple other ones
Why
also.
don't you do two more? And then I
Two.
have some final wrap notes.
Okay. One thing that's not necessarily for my jurors, but I do just want to say, someone asked in the write-ins whether fashion was judged just with fashion. Yes. So the works are judged against or alongside, they're looked at alongside other works of their genre, right? So all fashion works are looked at aside alongside other fashion works. Also, as I think Chinwe mentioned, the works are split by grade. So if you're a seventh grader, your work is not going to be compared to the work of a 12th grader. You're not doing the same kind of work. You don't have the same kind of experience. You're going to be looked at, your work is going to be looked at alongside the work of your peers. So that's just something that I wanted to clarify. And then what was one last question I wanted to ask my jurors who are here? Um, what do you do when you need a little inspiration? I guess is my question. Let's end on that. So okay, you're thinking about submitting this year. I don't know, but you're thinking about submitting next year. You do have Chinwe's problem, maybe, right? You have that blank page. What do you do when you need inspiration? Do you go back to an older draft? Do you go to an artist you admire? What do each of you do when you need to get a little jolt of inspiration?
For me, I think it's kind of what you just said. I love cinema and I love watching movies that I don't know, just make me feel something. So yeah, I'm a person who goes to the movies by myself. And it's just always exciting, especially like when my favorite directors are still making work. I recently saw One Battle After Another, and like that movie just inspired. Like I just feel like, I just love films that talk about so many things. Like, so I don't know, just finding art that inspires you kind of just gives you that excitement again in your craft. I would say that.
Okay, awesome.
Mhm.
Such a good suggestion. Chinwe?
Yeah. I go back to my favorite albums, my favorite books, things that really made me feel things. And I also will be really weird. I'll like turn down the lights and like put on my favorite song and jump around and like yell the first words that come to mind or be like, this isn't going to be a real drawing and just like scribble all over. And then inevitably, in the midst of all the weirdness, there's like a little something where I'm like, you know what? Okay, I'm going to turn the lights back up. I'm going to take that little bit of weirdness that came out and see what I can do with it. So when in
Okay.
doubt, jump
Just
around.
jump around. I think that's really wonderful advice. I do that also. I do a combination. Read something I love, put on, light a candle, put on some strange music. Maybe I put on perfume, even though no one can smell
Ooh.
it, right? Do something to call in the spirit of creativity. Thank you both so much. Speaking of vulnerability, for speaking with the young people about your craft and what you look at. Thank you for being vulnerable with us and sharing your expertise.
Yes, thank you very much to both of you and to all of our jurors who review such fabulous teen work. I have a couple wrap um, housekeeping notes that I would love to share. So, just to recap some of our insider tips that we touched on. review your categories. All the there, I saw a couple different questions in the chat about whether to submit to this category or that category. We have all of our guidelines on the website for them. And we note that we don't like reclassify your works if we think, oh, they submitted to drawing, but we really think it's more of an illustration, so we're going to move it to illustration. We don't do that. We want to follow what you how you are interpreting your work, and likewise would encourage you to read those read those categories wisely. Don't include personal identifiers, so your name, your school, your birthday. That's not to say that work should not be personal or reflect your personal voice. We do not want your biographical information on your artwork. If you are doing a painting and you've signed it, if you've already signed it and your signature is fairly legible, we would recommend maybe trying to cover just that corner. But otherwise, try to hold off on signing it if you haven't yet. Review our originality guidelines. We touched a little bit on how many of you will submit projects from class, which is totally fine. But we do really encourage originality and your own perspective and voice in the project. And just to recap what I said earlier, complete those entries early, complete them before Thanksgiving break, which is very, very soon. I know many of you may be in the region at large, which is our catch-all region that is across the US and Canada. If you don't have a local affiliate, that deadline is December 2nd. That is next week. Get your submissions started now. Again, we cannot help you at 11:58 p.m. We are in bed. A little bit about the scholarships. I mostly want to call attention to the fact that you can visit our website, artandwriting.org/scholarships for more information. We touched on the portfolios. We'll talk a little bit more about the scholarship process in the next upcoming webinar, or about all of the scholarships, I should say, in the next upcoming webinar. But all that information and more can be found on our website. I will highlight from these that American Voices and Visions and Best in Grade, everyone is considered for those automatically. And then New York Life, Her Block, and Flaunt It, you have to decide to enter. Here are some of our notable alumni. Could your name be on this someday? Picture your name in this slot. All right. With very many thanks to our sponsors, to Aleha and Chinwei, and to Julia for leading us through such wonderful discussion. All right. I hope everyone has a great rest of your evening. Stay warm, and we can't wait to see what you create.